Welcome to Bare Bones. With your hosts, Dr. Mason West.
Welcome in, Bears fans, to another episode of Bare Bones. I am Mason West, and as always, I am joined by Khari Thompson. Khari, how you doing?
Doing wonderfully, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, not too shabby. I'm actually tired today. I don't know why. It's one of those days, and we have a long-ish show ahead of us with a lot of information to get through.
Well, let's get to it then. Let's not waste no time. Let's go.
First things first, Bears are on their way to Canton. You know, this is pretty exciting. Devin Hester, Julius Peppers, and of course, Steve Mongo McMichael are all going to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame.
And you know what? I think obviously in the short term, you're happiest for Mongo. This is something that I think, maybe some of us didn't know that he was going to get a chance to see. And, obviously, we'll see if he actually, if he can, be there for the ceremony. Obviously, health has been struggling, but or at least have somebody that's there and, have him be there to, to see it. But the fact that he knows that he's going in, I mean, you got to love it. You have to love that for him. Julius Peppers, look, I mean, one of the greatest freakazoids that has ever played football. I mean, I remember seeing some like training camp footage from like back in 2010, and he's chasing Devin Hester up the sideline, and I'm just like, no. This is not real. This is not possible. You can't do that. Okay, you're 6'7", like 290 pounds. You're not allowed to do that. And then one of my favorite players of all time. I mean, I would say my top three players of all time in no particular order. Sometimes it rotates, depending on how I'm feeling, but there's some combination of Ed Reed, Marshawn Lynch, and Devin Hester. And I can't tell you how much Devin Hester impacted the way I played football growing up. And just one of my enduring memories is twice that this happened, where my dad and I are watching a Bears game, and we were stomping, just jumping up and down and shaking the house because Devin Hester took one back to the house. Like, I mean, it's special stuff, man. And, I don't care about the specialist thing. He was the greatest to do what he did. And I mean, he impacted the game like few other specialists ever have. Now, I was telling somebody about this on another podcast. I did back in the day, man, like in those days where the Bears were good and they were going to the playoffs and making Super Bowls, and Devin Hester was there. I didn't care what the offense did, aside from like handing the ball off to Thomas Jones, because I like Thomas Jones. I didn't care about them throwing the football, none of that. I didn't want to see the offense on the field. I wanted to see the defense on the field, but there was a catch. I didn't want to see the defense allow the opposing offense inside the 40, because if they did that, then that meant that Devin Hester probably wasn't going to get a chance to return a punt. Like I would get furious, like at the fact that, like, what do you mean you didn't stop them at the 30? Okay, we need room for this punt return.
Exactly. The impact of these three players really can't be understated, right? Julius Peppers on the Bears from 2010 to 2013, three-time Pro Bowler with the Bears from 10 to 12, first team All-Pro in 2010, fourth in Defensive Player of the Year voting that year. He had 37.5 sacks, which are 15th in franchise history in just 4 seasons. You go on to Steve McMichael from 81 to 93, obviously part of the 85 Bears. like you said, unfortunately, is afflicted with ALS. Hopefully, he can actually make it to the ceremony. But, two-time Pro Bowler, two-time first-team AP All-Pro. He had 95 sacks, which were the most ever for a defensive tackle when he retired. And then for me, just like you said, Devin Hester just special, just because I grew up with Devin Hester, 2006, 2013, three-time Pro Bowler, three-time AP first-team All-Pro, set or tied a Bears or NFL record, on each of his NFL record, 20 career touchdowns. Like you said, I mean, like I remember being in shop class and making a belt with him doing the Superman on it. I remember every time that I scored in football in high school that I was, trying to emulate what he did and celebrate the way he celebrated. It was must watch TV and a weird time to be a Bears fan because, as you said, you almost hoped to see the defense out there so that you could hope to see what Devin Hester would do because the offense was replaceable. Who really cared what Rex Grossman was doing out there? It was gross. And of course, iconic calls, Devin Hester, you are ridiculous. And personally, for me, one of the highlights of my media, I put media in air quotes because I barely do this, career was when I got to interview Devin Hester a couple years ago as a part of Chicago Audible. That was awesome to be able to talk to one of my idols. And I'm so thrilled that he gets to be enshrined because, like you said, I mean, his impact was huge. He changed the return game, and now you're not going to see anything else like it because they've just, neutered the return game.
Basically, they're just like, never kick the ball down the middle of the field ever again, ever, in the punt return game. And then kickoffs, we can't just have people taking it back all the time. So touchbacks, that's the way of the game. But I mean, real quick, let me ask you a question. Favorite Devin Hester return aside from the Super Bowl? Let's take the Super Bowl out of it.
Oh, man. Probably in the Arizona Cardinals game. Just because, because there was a couple within there, so it's hard to pick which one, but I'm going to pick that game because, that game was defense and Devin Hester. And that was, and then, of course, you get to the iconic, we left them off the hook, and you wouldn't have that without it.
That was one of the jumping up and down, break the house moments.
What about you? What was your favorite?
That in the Super Bowl. Honestly, I feel like I set myself up now because I have so many. But here's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna double up on this one. So from a pure, oh my God, are you serious? Like just level of technical difficulty, I'm gonna go with the Minnesota Vikings punt return from 2007. So it was the game where AP went off and just like slayed the Bears. He had like 200 whatever yards and 3 touchdowns. And the one where Devin Hester caught the pass from Brian Greasy later in the game and all that stuff. But the punt return touchdown he had earlier in the game where there were like 5 dudes who had a shot at him. And And I mean, Jeff Joniak's call just slices 2. Now 3 Vikings. He just slid through 3. Like, there's no way he should have been able to do that. No one else is doing that ever. I don't understand. And so he's just chilling, jukes through 3 guys, and then while juking, like double jumps over one of the tackle attempts.
Just defying physics.
Okay, all right, sure, cool. And then, then there's nothing. And I mean nothing but Kentucky bluegrass in front of him. I mean, come on, man. Like that was just wild how casual he made that look when I'm pretty sure no one else in NFL history would have done that. Not a soul. I don't, still to this day, like I'll watch it and I'll just be like, come on. But I think that in terms of just like, aside from the Cardinals one that you talked about, and then the Super Bowl, the other one that had me lose my mind was when he broke the drought against the Packers in 2010. He hadn't taken one back in like 2.5 seasons or 2 seasons or whatever, 2.5 seasons. And he does it against the Packers. And I was watching that game in college with a bunch of my housemates. And when I saw him break free, I knew it was over, right? And so it didn't matter. The punter was there. He was going to juke him. It didn't matter. And so I get up and I run around the room, and I just stayed in the room just long enough to see him juke the guy and then do the little Chicago Bears Lambeau leap. And I sprinted around like the lower floor of like the house that I lived in. Because I mean, that was just, I knew it was coming. It had to happen at some point, and there it was. I mean, thank you, Devin Hester. I appreciate you, man. Good times.
Yeah, and the negativity that is Bears football history in the time that we grew up watching the sport, it was nice to have Devin Hester be a bright spot for us to be able to cheer and get that excited about.
Now, give us Peanut Tillman, man.
Peanut deserves. I mean, he has a punch named after him. That's what everyone calls it.
And it's funny because I was listening to 670 earlier, and the fact that, you know, there are people, there are like kids in the game now that are hearing the term peanut punch on broadcast, and they're just like, oh yeah, the peanut punch, and I found myself imagining, and like if I have a son one day, or you know, if my daughter Maya gets really into football, that one day she's gonna be like, what's the peanut punch? And I'm gonna be like, let me tell you, because I've watched it every Sunday for years, you know, and I'm gonna be one of them old whippersnap, you know, one of those old dudes talking about like, let me tell you, back in my day, you ever heard of Charles Peanut Tillman? And I'm going to sit up there and talk about how like he wasn't a great tackler, but man, if somebody was holding somebody up, he's just coming in there, wow, you know, with just like unerring accuracy. That dude was insane.
So yeah, hopefully he is next on the docket, and hopefully we are moving into a generation where we can get more Bears to the Hall of Fame. So before we get into the mock draft, which I know that's what everyone's here for, there is something I wanted to talk about, wanted to highlight. EJ Snyder has some new stats, QBS and QBDD. I think these are important because they talk about something that a lot of us want to discuss, but it's been hard to objectify. I'm going to throw a link in the chat here so you can see the original post if you so choose. Regarding this, because this is going to be hard to see without some visuals. So if you're listening to the podcast, maybe come back to the video or go check it out. But basically, EJ Snyder at Football EJ and Arjun Menon at Arjun Menon 100. PFF came up with a way of how much support a QB does or does not get from their supporting staff, which they call QBS, quarterback support. This takes in play calling, players on the roster, defense, special teams. So they're using stats like special teams EPA, defensive EPA, rush EPA, PFF pass block rates, etc. And you know, this comes with, then you get QBDD, which is quarterback difficulty differential. This was used to establish quarterback performance metrics to compare the amount of support received and how well the QBs perform on the field. So now if you're watching the podcast live, we're going to throw up a chart here. I'll get rid of that banner so it's easier to see. And what you can see from this chart is, you know, this plots out the QBS, offensive composite score for each QB on one axis, and use their EPA per play data on the other. So you get a quadrant graph that starts to show us their efficiency in relation to the amount of support they receive from their offense. So like top left, you have efficient QBs with little help, CJ Stroud. Top right, efficient QBs with lots of help, Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa. Bottom left, not efficient QBs, not a lot of help, Bryce Young, Sam Howell. And then bottom right, you have not efficient QBs with a lot of help from the offense, such as Desmond Ridder. Where was Justin? Bottom left. So he was not an efficient QB with not a lot of help. So if you're, depending on what seat you're sitting in, the pro Justin seat, maybe the pro rookie seat, you're kind of both right, because Justin did not have a lot of help, but he also wasn't very efficient. What are your thoughts on this so far, Khari?
And I think that to kind of almost skip ahead a little bit to the tailed graph that he did. Do you have that one?
I do have that.
Okay, well then I'm not going to talk about it right now. We'll go ahead and do that one when it comes. But it doesn't surprise me because I think that, you know, it's not as bad as it could be. He's not obviously Zach Wilson or Kenny Pickett or Bryce Young, where they're like bad. You know, Justin Fields is closer to average in both aspects. And I think it's important to look at that, right? So he's in the bottom left, but the offensive composite scores closer to average by and large. I think when it comes to Fields, I think, and it's important to take into account all of the context with it. He had some bad games, and I think this was kind of the case last year as well. He had like those first 3 games were bad. They were not good, and whatever blame you want to assign to him for those specific games, whatever, but they were not good. And they heavily weighted down the average, as did the Minnesota Vikings game. And then the Cleveland Browns game is kind of like he got let down in that one, but he also wasn't great. Then the rest of it was average to good. And so I think what you're seeing by and large is the bad games really weigh down the average, whereas when you kind of mitigate that a little bit, it was probably closer to okay, fine. But again, it's all part of it, right? So you have to take the bad with the good. So, yeah, I think it's fair to look at what Justin Fields did this year and say he had closer to, it's still below average, was closer to average certainly than it was last year, where I think that you would find Fields. I would be very curious if they go back and like retrofit these stats, because you would obviously find Fields in 2022 to be like way to the left.
Yeah.
But probably closer to efficient QB, not a lot of offensive help. But
the way I would look at it too
more or
is
less checks out to me.
And look at the cluster, right? In this picture, again, if you're watching the podcast, the cluster he's living in, while you're absolutely right, it's pretty close to that 50-50 in terms of his efficiency combined with, the help he's getting. He's surrounded by guys like, Russell Wilson, Will Levis, Desmond Ridder, Joshua Dobbs, Derek Carr, Gardner Minshew are kind of on the periphery of that.
Yeah, that's not the world you want to be
around.
Yeah, that's not the world you want to live in. It's just as simple as that. So, like, again, like I'm saying this is somebody that's like, I'm not going to act like I've watched every single game of all these other guys. So I'm talking about the context in a way that's like, okay, we've seen a bunch of the Bears games. And so it's like, is it all him? No, it's not. But this is not the world you want to be living in at quarterback. Yeah. Simple as that.
And as Khari mentioned, there was another chart, pulling that up now. This one, the final step was comparing the difference between supported QB received, that QBS, and the efficiency they generated EPA per play. This difference is their QBDD, as I mentioned earlier, that quarterback difficulty differential. So in this chart, this comet tail plot shows that QBS marked by the QB pictures and their EPA per play mark, which is the sharp points. Basically, how you can read this, if there's a long tail pointed to the right, they outperformed their support. If there's a short tail either direction or no tail, they performed fairly equal to their support. And a long tail pointed left, they underperformed relative to their support. So now there's a couple outliers I do want to highlight here, which is interesting, because if you look, according to this, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are underperformed relative to their support. Now, the reason for that is because their defenses were so good.
And I think that when you look at the Bears, you could probably make a very similar argument, is that the Bears defense performed so well with all the turnovers and interceptions that is probably also in that realm.
Yeah, exactly. So they would have had to play perfect in order to even out with some of that support that they had. Again, for the sake of our podcast, you do want to take a look at Justin, that QBS right below that 50 percentile mark. So not in the top half of the league in terms of how, he's able to perform relative to that. His tail is indicative of underperforming compared to the support he was given. But at the same time, like you were talking about, Khari, I mean, like that defense really did help out the second half of the year. You can, heartbreaker on this chart, you can see that Jordan Love is the exact opposite with a gigantic tail pointing to the right of how much he overperformed compared to his support. Same thing with like a Baker Mayfield falls in that category as well.
Yeah. And I think, look, the reality is what it is, right? The Bear, I don't think you're going to look at the Bears offense and say it was extremely amazing or talented. I mean, I think that people are like, well, they got DJ Moore. Like, that's enough. It's like they got DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. So it's like, all right, that's better, but it's not like it's an elite cast. But there are things that we're going to get into, I'm sure, where it's like, okay, eventually you want a guy that is going to be able to elevate the entire team and not just like he needs to have a stacked everything. And that's totally fair. And again, I think the reason you're seeing this tale is not necessarily that Fields was absolutely horrible. I actually saw a chart earlier that we're probably not going to get to, but in terms of EPA per play, that Fields was, and I want to go back and look at this actually, but he was almost dead center with EPA per play when pressured versus not pressured. So what you're looking at is, when you take it all into account, probably like a relatively average quarterback. But again, a relatively average quarterback with a defense that played as well as it did. And again, some of that you got to adjust it for competition, what have you, the quarterbacks they played against. But you would hope that you would have better than a 7-10 record. And again, this is all, there's all kinds of context that we can talk about, but just in the big picture, you would think that that defense, which was horrible for, 4 weeks, you got to acknowledge that. But that by and large, you would hope that your quarterback, with the defense playing that well, wins more games than they did. So this is all going to be part of understanding where they are, why they are where they are. And
obviously, you and I, Khari, we've been huge backers of Justin for the entirety of his career. And we will continue to do so, whether he's a Bear or not. And, when you really think about it, if the Bears had, if the Panthers didn't suck so much and the Bears held the 3rd overall pick, I mean, you're probably just, without much question, rolling with Justin going forward.
Maybe it would be more. It would be definitely more of a we'll see who's left and if we really like them. But
right. I mean, I know personally for me, I mean, I'm sure at some point I'll mock him to the Bears just because it is what it is. I'm not a huge Jaden Daniels guy, just in terms of for a variety of reasons. So if they're sitting there at number 3, I don't need Jaden Daniels, nor do I think I need to dip my toe into the JJ McCarthy pool. That's just where I sit. Obviously, a lot of people differ on that, but it would at least be more of, like you're saying, a conversation versus as of right now, the fact that you're sitting at number 1. That's why so many individuals have shifted to, what, we are ready to move on from Justin.
Yeah. And, I think that we'll talk more about it. I'm not going to spoil it right now. I'm not going to spoil it.
So EJ Snyder, one of the individuals who made this stat along.
I spent all last week with him, man.
That's so cool. I haven't hung out with EJ yet. I want to.
No, EJ. Okay, look, EJ, I hope you're watching this podcast. EJ is the man, the dude. And I also would recommend, because this is part of what got me to go to the Shrine Bowl this year, is that EJ, Brett Coleman, this is like part of what they do, man. They go down there and they kind of like hold court. Like they know all the people to talk to get access. And really the Shrine Bowl, it's a great experience, man. It's a wonderful experience. The access you get to the players is unparalleled. I mean, you can be on the sidelines and damn near on the field, honestly. I took videos of drills where do the running back drills where they would be going through the gauntlet. Like I'm literally right there. You can feel the pads pop on the video, stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I finally figured out how to use cinematic mode on my iPhone. So that definitely helped my quality. But then it's like when practice is over, you can walk up to any one of these guys and just be like, hey, you got a second? Can I get with you for a second? Or you can get them at the media availability. Like they do so much to make these players accessible to you. And the thing that I love too, and I think I realized this at the time, is that these guys down here, by and large, are not going to be first round picks. They're not good. The guys that you think about as like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be a mega star in the NFL. There is second round picks, a lot of day 3 picks, maybe some UDFAs, But you go there and you see these dudes out here grinding and working, and you see the scouts and the media people that are there. It's just a place where if you love football and you just want to go out there and see guys play ball and work their ass off, and you want to get a feel for, you want to talk to people who do this for a living, like, it's just a great place to be. And I also got a chance to meet people in and around the Bears. This is like by fortune.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to try to get down there next year. EJ will be hosting a live stream actually today, Q&A at 6:30. So right after we're wrapping up ish. Don't leave until we finish, of course. The links I just posted, but he down in the chat, but he also posted on his Twitter. I retweeted it. So if you're listening to this on the podcast later, you can always find that information. He's going to have there's going to be some visual upgrades based on feedback. So, for example, QB faces will now represent their EPA per play, and team logo will represent QBS. They also reverse the comment, so EPA pulls up or down, just to make it a little more user friendly.
Yeah,
it was a little confusing.
Yeah, and it took me a moment to kind of wrap my head around it, but eventually you go for it.
Good. That's the big thing, right? They unveiled this and then they took feedback and they made it better. That's the sign of some great statisticians, as you might put it. I don't think they call themselves statisticians, but I will. But yeah, that's what we got so far. Once we come back from this break, mock draft time. Welcome back in, Bears fans. It is time for our mock draft. 1.0. Yes, that's 1.0 because we have a bunch going forward. I tweeted out earlier the list of individuals who are going to be joining us this offseason, having their points of view, because, as much as I love Danny and Khari, sometimes we do think we're kind of similarly, as you might actually see in this mock that we have for you today. And so it's great to get another perspective. Yeah. And so Khari doesn't know what I picked yet.
I thought, okay, you know what? Never mind. Just damn.
So it'll be fun.
I really thought I was going to get it in this time. Damn it.
But how do we get here? Right. So the Bears have 6 picks this year. The Bears trade their second round pick to the Commanders, obviously, in October 31st in exchange for defensive end Montez Sweat. The Bears obtained a 4th round selection from the Eagles by trading down from 9 to 10 in the first round of the 2023 draft, where they chose Darnell Wright, passing on Jalen Carter. The Bears traded their 6th round choice to the Dolphins in August in exchange for guard Dan Feeney. Great choice. And then the Bears dealt their 7th round pick to the Patriots July 13th in 2022 in exchange for N'Keal Harry. Again, great choice. But without further ado, we are going to dive into this mock. But first, a warning.
The purpose of this mock draft is to help the hosts of Bare Bones better know the prospects of the 2024 NFL Draft. They are sharing this information so you, the follower, don't have to grind tape and scouting reports as you wait patiently for the Chicago Bears to make their selection. This is not meant to be predictive. If your favorite prospect was not selected in this mock draft, check out a previous or future mock as they may be included there. If they are never selected, oh well, get over it. Taking these mocks too seriously will result in headache, nausea, diarrhea of the mouth, cold takes exposed, troll status, tool status, and undying love for a prospect who gets cut before week 1.
Yeah, there's the warning. You can tell I used the visuals from last year because your face comes up later.
Honestly, that's a solid picture of me, though. So
yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, I'll take it. I got no problem with that.
So, Khari, first you traded. Oh no!
No. Actually, no. I like this. Keep the suspense.
Okay, so Khari traded out of the first pick with the Commanders, as a lot of Bears fans are freaking out about. He recouped the second pick, the second rounder from the Commanders, pick 40, and a future first. Talk through your thoughts here.
So when I've seen people talk about multiple first round picks, I've talked a bunch with people about this, and maybe I'm tripping, but typically when people talk about wanting multiple first round picks for, to move up like a spot or two or whatever, they usually just mean your 2024 and 2025 picks. They don't mean, oh yeah, we got to have 2024, 2025, and 2026. So that's my thought process here. It's like, hey, give us your first round pick of next year. If they really wanted the next 2 first round picks to move up, like one spot, that's insane. You know what I mean? And I don't think that's typically how that works. So I think it's basically just raiding their pantry for their best potential picks. And I think if the Bears were to make this trade, I think the first round pick, it's either got to be one of two things. You either got to take their first 2 picks of this draft and then maybe you get a second next year or whatever, or you get the first rounder next year and you take a lesser pick in this draft, and we'll see how that goes. But we'll see. But it's got to be one of those 2 things. And then I figured, like, okay, because if we're gonna be nice about it, because look, I'm a benevolent God. I'll give you your round 2 pick next year, but as long as you give me your first. So there's that. So give me your first rounder. I need it. And here's my thought process. Here's part of the preamble here. Okay. So Caleb Williams, I want to preface all this by saying that I believe that Caleb Williams is going to be the pick for the Chicago Bears at number 1 overall, that's what it's going to be. And that I think that is the prudent, smart thing to do, all things being equal. Okay. I do believe that. So if you're tripping about this and being like, that'll never happen, no chance. This is from the same franchise that kept Matt Eberflus when they had a chance to dump him. So stop telling me no chance about anything. I don't want to hear it. So I think that while all of that is true, and I think Caleb Williams is a better just natural passer than anybody in this draft, I got to be honest, like people are talking about Drake May being up there with it. I don't feel it. I don't see it. Drake May is very good, but I think his best plays and his best throws and all that is like Caleb Williams' second tier of best throws in his toolbox. That's me personally. That's how I feel. What I think though is that while you can be blown away by Caleb Williams' talent, and I think that's what basically anybody's really factoring in here, there's a chance that he gets into the interview room, and while it's not bad, I haven't heard anything about Caleb Williams that's bad necessarily. Like nothing anybody said to me on the record that's bad. Like I don't think he's a terrible person or he's like hiding some DUIs or something like that. I don't see that. But there's a chance that Caleb Williams doesn't blow the Bears away in the interview room. And I mean, like, blows them away to the sense of, oh my God, I need this guy. I need the man, Caleb Williams, on my team. The football player, I mean, yeah. I mean, come on. Like, you can watch this guy for 2 minutes and be like, oh, this guy's awesome, right? But, I mean, some of the things I heard around the Shrine Bowl and that I've heard from other people is kind of like, again, it's not like he's a bad person or whatever, but it's like the stuff you hear doesn't necessarily make you think like, oh yeah, he's totally going to come in and like lead this team and like lead the locker room and be somebody that everybody gravitates toward. And that might be completely unfair. I want to preface that. That might be completely unfair. I don't know Caleb Williams, right? I haven't talked to him. This might all be just whatever. I guess I'm just saying that there are people down there at the Shrine Bowl that put microphones in front of the USC players' faces and were like, hey, what's about Caleb Williams? What's up about Caleb Williams? Is he great? And on camera, they said, yeah, cool. He should be the number 1 pick. Good guy. But I heard from people who talk to guys in private who are like, So that kind of stuff makes you think that there's a possibility that maybe the Bears don't fall in love with him in that fashion. Then again, it might not matter. They might just be like, okay, he's fine. He's awesome on the field. He's fine and or good in the other asset. Even if he doesn't blow us away, let's go ahead and he'll fit in. So I'm just saying that. Okay. I'm putting all that context in here. That said, I feel like there's a possibility. Sorry. Go ahead. And then I'll continue my preamble.
No, I was just going to say, cause I just wanted to highlight, I also traded down and I'm just going to say pretty much the same thing.
Patriots.
And I went to the Patriots. I went because I didn't get an offer from the Commanders. That's the thing too with these mocks. I'm only taking what I'm given. I'm not going to keep running simulators
same. Yeah, exactly. That's what I did. Like I didn't force the trade. Like I just
So I got their third. I got their second from the Patriots. Excuse me.
Damn.
I got their future first and future second in
Ugh.
2025. I went with the thought process of
Ooh,
kind of what
no,
you're hearing.
okay. I just want to say, there's no way the Patriots would do this in real life. I just want to say, but my God, if they actually did that, that's really hard to pass up. Like you stole. Holy crap!
And the reason I felt okay-ish doing this because again, I was thinking Commanders, they weren't available to me because you're hearing, individuals talk about if the Commanders were going to move up, it's going to be for a bounty. You hear these like multiple first-round picks, this, that, and the other. So it was more just like, okay, here, this is the scenario we're creating. And the last thing I'll say on it is same thing that Khari said. The reason this might happen, the only reason this is happening is if they go in the room and they're just like, there's something off enough where we just don't love Caleb the guy. And then and that's the only reason.
And again, because the only reason we're even talking about that is they kept Matt Eberflus. They kept Matt Eberflus because of culture, and we think he's the right man for the job. The right man for the job. And all of us are looking at it like, what are you talking about? Like this dude is like, he's not it. But the personality, the culture, what he demands from the locker room, blah, 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 like all of that. That's why they kept him. Not because he was a good defensive coordinator or whatever, right? He's fine in that role, and the Bears did better once he took over play calling. But that's not why they kept him. They could find somebody else to be a decent defensive coordinator for a 4-3 style defense. They kept him because they thought he was the right man for the job. And so I think that this stuff matters to them. And Ryan Poles said it in the presser. Okay. He said the personal stuff matters. And again, I'm not saying that Caleb Williams or Drake May might not be interview well, but I think it's a matter of, do they blow you away? And the things I've heard about both guys is kind of like, I don't know that they're going to go in and blow you away. And I think that's something you got to consider. Their talent might blow you away. But I think that in terms of like the respect that Justin Fields commands, if you're comparing it to that, right? You go look at the passing and be like, yeah, those guys are better than Justin Fields. And in just like a vacuum, like you got to do it. You got to do it. But if you're thinking to yourself, like, I just believe in Justin Fields more than I believe in these guys at the NFL level, and Fields has been through it. He has persevered. He's had bad games where he screwed up and fumbled twice and then gone and led a game-winning drive, things like that. You can point to those as tangible examples of things he's done in the league. I'm not saying that means that they're going to keep him. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying, like, you got to consider that there's a possibility that they could look at these new guys and be like, I need to be blown away on the whole, completely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is, and the way we're doing this, you can only pick a player once. And so, at some point, one of us will pick Caleb. At some point, we'll pick May. At some point, we'll pick so. But, we wanted to just demonstrate, to get as many prospects out there for you, the listener, to know who's available, but then also just creating multiple scenarios that could potentially happen. And while it's more likely that they select a quarterback at this point in time with that number 1 overall pick, this is something that could play out. And it just so happens that Khari and I decided
we did the same shit, didn't
to make picks. His was at number 2. Mine was at number 3.
God, we did the same thing, didn't we? Oh my
and we both took Marvin Harrison Jr.,
wow.
wide receiver out of Ohio State.
I feel like I'm gonna have more to explain for mine.
That's fine.
Than you.
That's fine. 6'4", 205 pounds. He had 67 receptions for 1,200 yards and 14 receiving touchdowns. I mean, his dad, right, was an NFL Hall of Famer. He could arguably be the best player in this draft, depending on how you stack him. Definitely the best wide receiver in the last 5 years. Super productive, who was the best wide receiver in the nation in 2022, despite receiving pretty constant press coverage. Played on the outside in 2022, but moved to big slot in 2023. Tons of versatility, acceleration, and speed is awesome. He's always a vertical threat. Footwork and agility is great, which allows him to pace and snap off his routes exceptionally well for his size. explosive as hell, can stop on a dime and adjust to the ball. Rare, and I mean like rare ball skills. His ability to adjust, track the ball, work the sidelines, amazing. The negatives, there's not a ton, but there's enough. He's a little skinny, can get pressed by some physical corners, doesn't always play up to that rumored 4.38 speed. And when he's given a chance to break away, and he hasn't been great at yards after the catch, can go down a little quickly and holds the ball a little loose, can be open to that peanut punch as we talked about earlier.
Yeah. I think I'm curious about, especially this last year in terms of yards after catch. Is that a Kyle McCord issue? I'm curious. I'm gonna be curious if there's a difference in the yards after catch he had with CJ Stroud versus Kyle McCord. I'm gonna have to look into that. But especially like I feel like I'm gonna need to explain this because I did him at pick number 2 and you did him at pick number 3 where it's more understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I view it this way, and I know people are gonna get mad at me for this, but I just gotta be honest. If you're deciding that you don't want to take Caleb Williams, I don't know what the hell you're talking about with Drake May. Like if you're passing on Caleb Williams, you want to take Drake May at number 2. I personally, I'm like, I don't see it. And again, I think he's going to be good. I think Drake May is probably going to be good, goes to a good situation, and what have you. And, maybe selfishly, I would kind of like to see him on the New England Patriots just to like see how he does. So maybe there's a little bias there. Okay. Cause I'm out here in Boston. Okay. Go cry me a river. But I think that if you're doing that, you better believe Drake May is the best player in the draft. And I find myself just thinking this, we have become so quarterback centric in this conversation.
Yeah.
That it's like, okay, last year when we were talking about Jalen Carter being a top 3 or 4 pick or whatever, that's a defensive tackle. And you're like, okay, that's awesome, but he's a defensive tackle. This is a wide receiver. And we know how important wide receivers are. Wide receivers, PFF had some stats on this in terms of value in college and in the NFL. Wide receivers are more valuable than offensive tackles. Not as valuable as quarterbacks because quarterbacks are OP, but more valuable than offensive tackles. What if Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to the combine and he measures in at like 6'3 3/4 or 6'4 and over 200 pounds? And what if he does do the drills? And what if he runs a 4.3 or a low 4.4? What if he jumps out of the gym? What if he goes in the wide receiver group and runs the routes in the gauntlet drill and he looks like God's gift to mankind? And what if he goes into the interview and I've shared this stuff with you. What if he goes into the interview room and says the kind of stuff that he's said in the past where he's like, look, man, like in the end, all I want is to like be remembered for the kind of person I was and the kind of teammate I was.
Eberflus and Poles would eat that.
Oh my God. They will just be like, foaming at the mouth. If he does all that, don't tell me that there's no chance that the Bears leave the combine and think that's our top player on the board.
Yeah.
And if he's your top player on the board and you've got the number 1 overall pick and you know that the Washington Commanders are like, oh my God, I've got to get Caleb Williams. Like he's a hometown kid. Cliff Kingsbury's here and Cliff Kingsbury is literally hunting this dude across the world because he won't coach any quarterback that's not one of the most talented quarterbacks he's ever seen because who knows what his offense would look like without it. If they know that the Commanders are beating down the door and the Falcons might be beating down the door and everybody else is beating down the door trying to get Caleb Williams, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is at least equal to Caleb Williams, if not above when you consider all things. And you consider the fact that, yeah, we've been talking about Caleb Williams for the last 2 years. I mean, honestly, 3 years. Because, I mean, even as a rookie or even as a freshman in Oklahoma, he was still doing some amazing stuff. But we've been talking about Marvin Harrison for the last 2 years as one of the best players in college football, too.
Mm-hmm.
He was right up there. To me, it's like there's going to be a chance that Marvin Harrison is going to go into the combine, have a mutant ass combine, and the Bears are going to be like, I'm sorry, I got to get this guy. I've got to. And Justin Fields has done enough and has shown in his football lifetime that when you give him a lot of elite weapons, that he can kick ass. That maybe if we get him this elite weapon, I know there are going to be skeptics. That's fine. That's fine. There's skeptics to this. Look at Darnell Mooney. He didn't target Darnell Mooney. Look, Darnell Mooney is Darnell Mooney. Yeah. He's not Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay. When Justin Fields had Chris Olave and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson, like the dude was all world. And I get it. It's a different level. It's not college. It's the NFL. But I think that you can look at these things and see, like, when Justin Fields trusts a guy, he'll throw it with anticipation. He will do all the things that you want, but he's got to have the trust. I feel like Justin Fields could trust the hell out of Marvin Harrison Jr. I feel like if you get Marvin Harrison Jr. and DJ Moore and Justin Fields all in the same place, they're going to be the Spider-Man meme pointing at each other. They're going to be like, we all see each other in just a fundamental way. And I just feel like it would work. And again, this is not the most likely outcome. I'm not trying to sit up here and tell you that it is.
Yeah, Adam Jenkins in the chat, you're missing the entire point of this process right now. Tune in for another episode and we'll talk about the quarterbacks.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, I'm okay if you don't like it, what have you. But the other part of this is that again, I just, you don't take a wide receiver over a QB. Look, the Bears have shown to me that they don't care. They want their guy. They want their best player on the board. They passed up Jalen Carter, the guy that everybody said they should take last year. Okay. They passed up the wide receivers that everybody said they should take in the first year with polls. And they took freaking Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker because they fit the culture. I'm not saying they're going to do that this time. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you can't discount that it would happen. Okay. Bean. Bam.
Boom. All right. Moving on. Next pick. So pick 9. Neither of us traded back at this point in time.
We did not pick the same person.
Oh, and we picked the same person again. We did this entirely separately. And we just happened to pick the exact same people at our picks. Pick 2 and 3 earlier. Now at pick 9. Dallas Turner, edge out of Alabama.
What are we doing here? You go ahead and break this one down. I talked enough.
So Dallas Turner, you got this cluster of edges that you could potentially take here. Obviously, in this scenario, the conversations is wide receiver, edge, you trade back, etc. We already have Marvin Harrison Jr. So here you got to get someone opposite of Montez Sweat. Height 6'4", 252 pounds. 14.5 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, 1 pass defended, and 2 forced fumbles. Dallas Turner might be the best pure athlete in this year's edge class. His athleticism stands out as a pass rusher, really solid frame with room for growth, can add some thickness on there, impressive finesse moves that win at the NFL level. I mean, his dip, rip, and ghost rush are just beautiful. Just go ahead and watch some tape if you haven't. Good bend and ability to turn a tight corner, displays adept change of direction skills, adeptly navigating through blockers with a green light to pursue, can also bull rush when needed using good hand placement and leg drive, and he can get to the QB pretty quick once he hits his move. He applied pressure on 19.8% of his pass rush snaps last year, which was the 5th highest this season. Turner finished with, like I said, with 10 sacks. He needs to polish his hand usage a little bit during finesse moves. He might miss his initial chop, and after that, it can get a little funky. They can definitely add more strength, too, as he struggles to consistently knock down offensive linemen's arms off of him. His lateral movement is smooth, but it lacks a little bit of disruptive force that, we've seen some other elite edge rushers of similar size in the league have. And he needs to show more violence when shedding blocks in the run game and can still grow into that body, become physically controlling at the line of scrimmage. But you can't really deny that his speed and quickness.
He's one of those, I feel like he could well be one of those RAS guys.
Yeah.
that they're going to look at and be like, oh God, we can work with this. It might not be the best, and maybe we'll have him sort of take the pressure off him by signing a veteran edge. But if this dude is going to run the way he runs, and he's going to test the way that we think, and have the raw, I mean, I'm watching him just Euro step guys right now.
It's like sometimes they don't even touch him. It's wild.
No, and there's another guy on my list that I'm thinking of. I don't know if I also drafted him, but I mean, we'll see. But I mean, look, when you're talking about Alabama defensive linemen, there's a common theme. They're usually pretty freaky, and generally they end up being fairly impactful. So I feel like the Bears, if that's one thing from there are a couple of reasons for this. Number one, they need more pass rush. We all know that. They could get it from the interior, edge, what have you. But I feel like I would like it to be edge. And the other thing is whether they keep Justin Fields or draft a rookie quarterback, you also want to have cheap assets. I feel like there's something nice and symmetrical about having Montez Sweat, your high-priced edge guy, and then you have a young guy that you can mold on the opposite side of that. It doesn't have to be all spending money in free agency. And by the way, this is another thing that in terms of financials, yeah, I get that paying somebody like Justin Fields or paying a quarterback or what have you, there's like this idea that, like your window might be closing. If you draft well, no, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a valid point. Next. So I traded down at this pick. Some of the players I wanted were gone, and there were a couple other ones that were further down that I thought I could get with a trade down. So in this instance, I moved down 14 spots and snagged an extra third and a future fourth rounder when I traded with the Jaguars. So I'm no longer chilling at that pick. So Khari was next. Round 2, pick 40. This was one of the guys that was gone in my scenario.
Zach Frazier from West Virginia. Look, I saw a bunch of really good offensive linemen down there at the Shrine Bowl. And particularly, I think I saw some really good centers. Zach Frazier is better than all of them. And you would be able to step right in and just be able to do this from day one. Now, I think there's still a good chance that maybe you're thinking, okay, maybe you sign a veteran center and go that route as opposed to drafting a rookie. But I think you're better equipped to draft a rookie center now and have him grow into the role if you've got Nate Davis on one side and Tevin Jenkins on the other side. And then your younger players, like Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright, are on the edges. But now you've got some kind of veteran guys who can help you out. You can point out things that you need to see. You can develop into that role. And again, I just think that he is gonna be that nasty physical force, especially just moving downhill. Like I think this is the part that we can't just brush away. Yeah, we want to talk about the passing game. That's the way that you have the most upside. But Matt Eberflus as a defensive coach, and it's something that they wanted to do the last couple of years, they want to run the football, man. Shane Waldron's also going to run the football. So I think he would fit in like a glove for what they're going to want to do.
Brandon Green asks, is he better than Van Pran?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. Haven't watched enough of Van Pran. I know people love him. What do you think?
I'm going to hold my answer.
Okay. Then you know what? That gave us some homework. Thanks for going ahead and giving us that. Because I know on the PFF mocks, Van Pran lasts until the third round, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I mean, I know that I've seen a lot of people get really into Van Pran as an option. I'm going to go ahead and watch him and get back to you. Join us for the next time.
I will say, I think from what I've seen right now, Frazier has a little more athleticism and a little higher ceiling ultimately of what he can be. But I'll get in I'm going to hold on Van Pran, though. My pick, when I traded down, round 2, pick 48, I kept on the offensive side. I took Jatavian Sanders, tight end out of Texas. 6'4", 243 pounds. He was a 5-star recruit out of high school. Played in 13 games last year and hauled in 39 catches for 607 yards for an average of 5.6 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns, and a QB rating when targeted of 104.3. As a pass blocker, he gave up 4 pressures and surrendered a pretty poor 3 sacks, but that's not why you have him out there. You have him out there because he's a good open field blocker, shows strength against secondary defenders, and you especially have him out there for his receiving. He's a very reliable receiver with an ability to high point the catch, rarely drops passes. Love his deep speed and agility as a route runner. He can rack up yards after catch and shows potential as a screen receiver. Simply can't play linebacker on him. You can't. He's a matchup nightmare. You're thinking more of your Dalton Kincaid, your Travis Kelce-esque. I don't want to even say Travis Kelce because that's going to
he's a new age tight end.
He's a new age tight end. He's strong, accurate hands off the line of scrimmage when pressed, so he can get off the line. He struggled against edge defenders when blocking. That again, that's his thing. And not going. He's not going to be your traditional inline tight end, but that's why you have Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet is your traditional inline tight end. Maybe you're going to keep Mercedes Lewis as your third tight end as a blocker. Basically, Jatavian Sanders is your big slot, right? He's your move tight end. He's that one that's just going to get that, run your seam routes. He's the one that's going to run you a deep post, things of that nature.
Problem.
And that's what this offense needs more of. So that's my guy, Jatavian Sanders. Super excited about him.
Yes. And he was at the Shrine Bowl, but did not participate because he was injured.
Something definitely keep an eye on. Oh, I'm up again. Round 3, pick 75. I went to the defensive side of the ball. Yeah. Javon Bullard, safety out of Georgia. 5'10", 197. Kind of a smallish frame, that can be worked on. Hopefully fill out a little bit. But he had 2 interceptions and 5 passes defended last year. Gave out an outstanding QB rating when targeted of 36.6. He shows really good movement skills and balance in space. Good range of cover from sideline to sideline. High football IQ guy and play recognition in both the pass and the run game. He's better in pass coverage than run support. Able to mirror quarterback size well and can match both in man and zone. High level ball skills, tracks the ball well, high points and undercuts routes. Can get up under receiver's chin and has the speed to flip his hips and run downfield. He has quick hands, but he's at his best when he's able to look in the backfield. Recovery speed is below average, and he can get caught out of position. He doesn't have top end speed. Because of this, he tends to play a little conservatively and gives too much cushion when playing off. Tackling is inconsistent at best. He can get his head in there and when he wants to, but a little too often he ends up diving at ankles. So the thing I'm the most concerned about is, again, that top end speed, but not as big of a concern at safety as it is at corner.
Yeah. And I think the elephant in the room is that you need to replace Eddie Jackson, because I think you just, even if you're talking about a pay cut, I just don't know that you can keep him. You need a guy who can move a little bit and be more available than Eddie Jackson was. And Lord knows I love Eddie Jackson, I always have, but you need more out of the safety position than he can give right now.
More likely than not, we're going to see Eddie Jackson gets cut, says, hey, go find a deal. If you can't find something that you like, come back and we'll resign you. Because I'm sure the Bears want him back, but you're still probably going to draft a safety too. I mean, their safety depth is trash.
It's awful. And I have solutions to that later, but
Later. All right. Coming up next, Khari, round 3, pick 75. Got a special one for you.
So I'm going to try and speed through these a little bit. I think even in this scenario where you're keeping Justin Fields, obviously, if you've seen from my mock draft, I haven't traded him. By no means does that mean that Justin Fields is most definitely the only option that you have. I don't know that I was overly impressed with Michael Pratt at the Senior Bowl, but I think that all of the Senior Bowl guys kind of suffered from the same issue of not having the continuity with their receivers and kind of looking meh to bad. But I think that in Pratt's case, I think it was a little bit more of like, all right, okay, it's fine. But I think that in theory, when you're looking at what he did in college or what he might be able to do, is a little bit more of a balanced take on things, where it's not a got to be preternaturally athletic or to be able to make crazy plays, but a guy that you can develop, and a guy that maybe you can get into Shane Waldron's hands and say, okay, you know what? While Justin Fields is starting and taking some lumps, let's see what you've got. You're probably better than Tyson Bagent. And maybe we can find a little bit something more from you behind the scenes. So again, I'm looking at this like just because in this particular case, and again, don't jump down my throat because I did this one mock draft that I told you I was going to do this entire time, where I was going to explore a different possibility. All right. But I mean,
no respect for Agent Orange.
Yeah, sorry. I don't feel it. But his production over the last 2 years in college was a marked jump over what he did as a freshman and sophomore. I think he definitely improved. Maybe something there, you know, and again, I think that we've shown that you got to get the quarterback position right. But when you've got guys on rookie contracts, you don't always need to have the quarterback completely right. Sometimes you just need to have the roster right. And I think that the Bears are probably closer to having that roster close-ish to right. But then if you're keeping Justin Fields because of the continuity and because the guys believe in him and all that, that doesn't mean you just don't take any more quarterbacks. I would say that if it is at all possible, if the guy fell down, I feel like JJ McCarthy feels like it feels like the Bears are going to like him.
I've heard that first round.
I've heard they already like him. Honestly, I think I hear that like, oh yeah, top 10 pick. I don't believe it.
I don't think it's a top 10 pick. I mean, but I do think he's being taken the first.
I think that he's a back end of the first round kind of pick.
Teams are going to fall in love with the fact that he's a winner. Like he won in high school, he won in college.
Yeah.
He's the guy that you bring home to meet your father kind of thing.
Back end of the first round kind of pick or early second round pick. But if the dude falls and you're interested and people are just like, yeah, he doesn't really have a lot of experience, so we'll see. I could be down with that.
I'm back up. Round 3, pick 79. Honestly, this might be one of my favorite players in this draft that isn't being talked about enough. Malachi Corley, wide receiver, Western Kentucky. 5'10", 215 pounds. He's hit 23 miles per hour on the GPS and clocked a 4.43 40-yard dash. His 408 shuttle time and 355-pound bench press are also excellent. He is known as the Yak King amongst his peers. Corley had one of the lowest average depth of targets in college football over the past 2 years for one reason. The Hilltoppers just wanted the ball in his hands. He led the nation in total yards after catch and yards after catch per reception in 2022. And in 2023, he racked up 101 catches for 1,295 yards and 11 touchdowns. Stout and dense bowling ball in an individual. He's basically running back build with wide receiver speed and fluidity. Explosive and compact long strider who can stretch seams when he has space. Elite attack explosiveness and angle erasing burst. His hand strength and focus to corral contested throws over the middle of the field is great. He's got pretty solid spatial IQ, flowing through zones and sitting in DB's blind spots, can absorb solo hits and just break tackles like no other. He has the versatility to be used in motion and scheme touches in countless ways. The main drawback with Corley is he's a weapon first and wide receiver second. His long speed, while solid, isn't breakaway, and he's got a smaller catch radius due to his size. He doesn't have that size to box out DBs at the catch point on fade routes, and he ran a pretty simple route tree. And sometimes he lets passes into his frame over the middle, which could be a source of drops. I mean, like I said, he's essentially a running back playing the wide receiver position. So poor man, soon to be rich man's Debo or a budget Golden Tate. But I mean, I love the versatility he'd bring, and he's a better Velus Jones Jr. when he was supposed to be. So I love Malachi Corley. If they could figure out a way to snag him, I would be all about it.
It's interesting too, because you mentioned Velus Jones Jr. and it's one of the things I told you behind the scenes that, apparently Velus Jones Jr. Is willing to play more running back. I'd be curious to see what he ends up doing in that aspect, because I think that's probably, if he's going to do anything, he needs to be in sort of that multi-dimensional role. I don't think he can just be a wide receiver. They just got to find ways to get him the ball, run straight.
He's an every time he touches the ball, it's a first time or a touchdown. It's so frustrating.
He fast.
Round 4, pick 110. Khari is back up.
One of my guys at the Shrine Bowl. Okay, look, I interviewed Dadrian Taylor Demerson. He calls himself Rabbit. All his friends call him that. This dude, he's like, and again, not comparing talent levels, but the demeanor, the personality feels like a dollar store like Tyrann Mathieu. This guy is always out there talking. He can do everything. I mean, he was back there returning punts and trying to do that. I mean, he was playing safety and nickel and corner straight up, and just everywhere. And he feels like a guy who can be a leader on a defense. I think you could take him, potentially put him anywhere you feel like putting him. I mean, come on. Like, if you wanted a potential, Kyler Gordon, I love him at nickel. But if you wanted to put Dadrian at nickel, you could do that. If you wanted him to put him at safety, you could do that. He could do anything that you need. He's tough. He's out of Texas Tech. The thing that I loved about him, man, was he was just like, look, man, my father, he's a preacher. He preaches the word of God. I preach the word of football. I mean, that was an excellent bar. Love the guy. I feel like he's somebody that'll impress someone in an interview. And I feel like, again, the communication, the culture, I feel like he would fit right in here, man. And again, the versatility and the fact that he could play special teams, he could do it all. He could do whatever you want.
And that's huge because, let's say for sake of argument, Eddie does get cut and brought back. You need that other safety to be able to do special teams. I mean, that's imperative. So the fact that he's got that, the flexibility you talked about, one of the things that the Chiefs are doing so well right now on their path to the Super Bowl is the flexibility their secondary can play with, how they are this amorphous blob where, all of a sudden their nickel is now their corner, outside corner. Now their outside corner has moved up towards the safety position. So, that versatility is huge.
Absolutely. Love it. One of my guys.
My pick at round 4, pick 110. Someone asked about Cedric Van Pran. I'm here to deliver. I got him here. I'm not convinced that, round 5, typo there. Ignore that. But I'm not convinced that he will be available here just because we always see certain positions move up in drafts. Center is going to be one of them just because there's not a lot of centers.
And it was last year. It was a position, an interior offensive line that flew off the board.
Like Juice Scruggs was a guy last year that Bears fans I had circled, and he went earlier than we thought, like a whole round or two earlier.
Yep.
Cedric, 6'4", 310 pounds, experience. He's got 43 starts at center, 13 last year. So that's center. So he's not one of those guys that, played it a little bit or this or that. He is a center, and that's huge. You don't have to teach him how to play the damn position. 3-year starter at Georgia and a very balanced attack, 52 run plays, 48 pass split, zone-based run scheme centered around the inside zone, pin pull, and split flow variations. Very good for what the Bears want to do. Love his hand usage and technique along with his football IQ. He's just a very sound player. Squat, thick build gives him some natural leverage. Skilled run blocker. Good understanding of how to negotiate and secure the first level on combo blocks before ultimately climbing to that second level. He's got athleticism needed to move as a center, even though he does have that mass I talked about. He's a really solid initial quickness and burst that allows him to reach shades and line up close proximity targets on pulls and climbs. Brings a finisher's mentality with the strain and effort to set a physical tone and wear down opponents. Eberflus is going to love that. He's got some reduced body control and lateral quickness. Sometimes he's a little late, just a touch. Inconsistent anchor due to not playing long, letting the bull rush get into his chest and soften up his edges. So he's got to strengthen up that core a little more. Hey, come see me, Cedric. I got you. Not elite length sometimes prevents him from sustaining power exertions, and his energy can be a double-edged sword with overshot angles and unstable pad levels. I think right now he's just being undersold because guys like Zach Frazier and Jackson Powers Johnson are just kind of overwhelming people with what they're doing. You also, I like the fact that he pretty much only played center. Some people are going to say, hey, where's my guard versatility? We didn't see that, obviously. And it's like, I don't care. I need a center. I'm sick of Lucas Patrick. I'm sick of the revolving door of centers we've had there. Give me a center. And he fits the bill.
Can't have it. And again, to me, this year doesn't matter if the center is young. I mean, I could understand it last year, or maybe you're like, I don't know what we're going to do in terms of the interior, who's going to be playing there. To me, don't mess around. Yeah. I almost said something else, but, sorry.
Bring on the show. Khari, back up. Round 4, pick 122.
Another one of my Shrine Bowl guys, Xavier Thomas, edge from Clemson. A little bit undersized, I think, from what you'll want a 4'3" defensive end to be. He's about 6'2", 6'3", 240-ish pounds. I think you could add some weight to that frame. But I'm going to tell you what I saw. In terms of pass rush, two things. Number one, the play recognition. I watched him basically torch in off like a whole drive in team drills where he read a read option perfectly and sniffed it out, just not fooled whatsoever. And then got a sack on a play action because he was just like, oh, please, I got this. It's like not fooled by the fake at all. Got himself a sack out of that. And then in one-on-one drills, man, like this dude would just be dancing on people. They wouldn't touch him. They couldn't get like a finger on him because he's got elite quickness, I feel like, for that position. And I feel like, again, I think that he is able to show enough pop in the run game to hold his own, hold the edge to where you're not necessarily just going to run over the guy, especially if he adds a little bit more weight to his frame. And I think that, again, just the way that I'm like asking him about how he sees the game, I feel like he sees it all. And I think that he's going to be able to play a bit more of a role than maybe your standard rookie would, because he is that intelligent. He clearly sees things well on the field and reacts well. I think, again, he's a little bit of a tweener right now, but if you go ahead and you get him to put a little bit of weight on, I can see the vision.
I like the double dip at edge. So my pick at round 4, pick 122, also from Clemson, but went a little differently. I went inside. Tyler Davis. He's 6'2", 299 pounds. I like his get off. Quick to react to snapping, accelerates well. He's got a high motor, just one of those never stops kind of guys. Strong at the point of attack and will stun offensive linemen with his pop. Strong dude. Davis has reps where he walks the interior offensive lineman right into the lap of the quarterback. He's hard to move in the run game, keeps his feet moving, and uses his arms well to keep the offensive lineman off his body. His injury history is a bit concerning. He missed multiple games between 2020 and 2022. So in 2022, he missed 2 games for an undisclosed reason. 2021 had a torn bicep where he missed 3 games. 2020 had an MCL sprain where he missed 2 games. Ankle missed 3 games. I mean, that adds up. Arms are a bit short. He's only about a 75.5-inch wingspan. And he can get kicked inside a bit too easy. And while he's flashed a couple of counter moves, like a rip or swim off the bull rush, his subpar use of hands and athleticism limit his pass rush arsenal. He's not really a pass rush threat. He had half a sack in 2023, more of a 2-down player, but he can play that 2 technique. So, when you're this late in the draft, round 4, you're just looking for some guys that can give you some juice. Tyler Davis can do that.
Love it. And you know what? I'll say this. I saw a bunch of interior defensive linemen down at the Shrine Bowl. Christian Boyd from Kansas State, absolute monster. And I also think there are a couple of guys from like Fabian Lovett from UCLA. I mean, whoo, that guy was killing. Or sorry, so Fabian Lovett from Florida State. Don't come at me, y'all. Florida State. That guy was killing. I think that there are definitely some options there on the interior defensive line that you can go for.
All right, this is my last pick.
Let's go.
Jaquavius Marks, running back, Mississippi
Ooh,
State.
I dig.
This was mainly, so this started with me seeing one clip where he's pass blocking and just stonewalled the blitzing linebacker.
And you're
And then
yes, Lord.
dove into that a little more. 5'10", 210 pounds. What I like about him is his toughness and pass pro and versatility. As a sophomore in 2021, he played 13 games, rushed for 465 yards, 110 carries for 4.2 yards per carry with 6 touchdowns with no fumbles. In the passing game, he had 78 receptions for 460 yards. As a senior, that shifted a little bit. Passing game, he only had 24 receptions for 167 yards. His usage went down, but the potential is there, as we saw in his sophomore year. His 191 receptions leave him only 9 shy of the Mississippi State record. The good, he runs low with a forward lean, solid vision, he can bounce off or spin off tackles. Catch and run is enticing, and is a pretty natural pass catcher. He's got a good burst to the second level. Like I said, outstanding pass protection, which the Bears have suffered with over the last couple of years, especially last year. And his assignments are sound, especially with the lack of opportunities to show it. The bad, pretty limited route tree. Like I said, he's got a lot of receptions, but that was more going to be screens and some flats. You weren't seeing some of those funky angle routes, and you weren't seeing flies. You weren't seeing Austin Eckler-esque routes, really. He's shown hesitance at the line of scrimmage. He can get a little choppy there, and he shies away from contact a little too much for me. Playing speed is not elite. Won't run away from defenders. He's more or less a one-cut back. But at this stage, you're just looking – I'm looking for a guy that I compare with the running backs I have, right? Khalil Herbert's my juice. I got he's going to be the guy that can come in on that third down and be solid as that pass-catching back and hopefully maybe get a little more out of him.
Yes. I mean, the Chicago Bears need a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield and do something with it. So, yeah.
All right. Those are the picks. Those are the drafts. As you can see, I have them all lined up here. Both of us took Marvin Harrison Jr. first with our first pick. Mine
won't do it again, I promise.
Mine at pick 3. Khari did at pick 2. We both took Dallas Turner, edge out of Alabama, at pick 9 in the first round. I had a trade in there. Again, if you're listening to the podcast, go ahead and check out the YouTube video. So the rest of Khari's draft: Zach Frazier, center, West Virginia; Michael Pratt, quarterback, Tulane; Dadrian Taylor Demerson, safety out of Texas Tech; and then Xavier Thomas, edge out of Clemson. My draft wrapped up: Jatavian Sanders, tight end out of Texas; Javon Bullard, safety out of Georgia; Malachi Corley, might be my favorite pick, wide receiver out of Western Kentucky; Cedric Van Pran, center out of Georgia; Tyler Davis, defensive interior out of Clemson; and then Jaquavius Marks, halfback out of Mississippi State. Overall, touched on all the needs that we thought had to be there. We said this at the top of the show too. We're going to give you variety. This one, we both decided to go with the keep Justin route. And apparently Khari wanted his heir apparent in Michael Pratt. But in the future, we're going to have other picks. At some point, we're going to take Caleb. At some point, we're going to take Drake May. And we'll have some breakdown for you on that as to why we're doing what we're doing.
We're going to take J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix.
Honestly, yeah, at some point, because we have like 6 of these drafts to do. And again, we can't pick the same player twice. So
wait, so that means, do I got to do this the whole time? Oh my God. No, not like this. Not like this.
But that's all we got for you. Thank you everyone for joining. Always remember, please, if you can, comment down on the video. That helps the algorithm, helps us reach other Bears fans. Share this with a friend. If you have a friend that loves the Bears, tell them to come check us out. We're pretty cool. Hey, you're here. You listen to us. Khari, anything to say before we get out of here?
Bear down, as always. And stay sane. Stay sane. It's going to be a long couple of months. Oh, God, don't freak out.
The draft can't get here soon enough.
I'm that's why I'm reducing the number of chat rooms. I'm reducing the amount of engagement. Every time I see Justin Fields or Caleb Williams on my trending, I say not interested because I don't want to know.
Like you said, stay safe, stay sane, enjoy what you have. Enjoy the Super Bowl. We didn't really mention that at all.
Oh, baby. I mean, it's going to be Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes anymore. I'm done with that. Yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and say, I know that everybody really, really wants Caleb Williams to be the next Patrick Mahomes. There is no next Patrick Mahomes. There is Patrick Mahomes, and that's it. So you better hope that Caleb Williams is the next Caleb Williams, because there ain't not another one of Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes is inevitable. Bear down, everyone.
He's Thanos.